After a decade suffocated by loneliness, Nathan dared to go up to the 15th floor of a luxurious restaurant and opened his heart for a blind date. Little did he know that the woman he met that night also carried deep wounds, and that's when passion began to bloom. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Nathan Brooks stood under the soft glow of the lobby's chandeliers, scanning his phone for the 10th time in as many minutes. Even there, at the base of the high-rise where he was scheduled to meet someone entirely new, he felt the desire to back out. Michael's texts repeated in his mind. "Trust me on this. It's time." A low hum of anxious energy made his heart pound. He pushed the phone back into his jacket and took a moment to inhale, eyes closed, as if that small pause could dispel a decade's worth of worries. His shoes clicked on the polished floor as he made his way toward the elevator. People in elegant clothes brushed past him, talking in whispers about dinner plans, raising the usual holiday spirit that still lingered in the air right after the turn of the year. Nathan tried to steady his breathing. He glanced at the mirrored elevator doors and caught his reflection, noticing how rigid his shoulders looked. Fixing his tie felt like an oddly intimate moment of self-acknowledgement. He hardly recognized the man staring back. In that reflection, he saw traces of the person he'd been years ago, back when life was simpler, before his family fell apart and work became his entire world. The elevator arrived with a gentle chime. He stepped inside along with a handful of other guests dressed in winter coats, scarves, and sparkly outfits. Soft music played overhead. Ordinarily, he wouldn't have felt self-conscious at all, but the enclosed space heightened his tension. He could practically hear the drumbeat of his heart beneath his blazer. He had spent 10 years avoiding this moment, 10 years telling himself he didn't need anyone. A single dinner should be easy, he told himself. But it wasn't just a casual dinner. It was a blind date, one his best friend had arranged, and for reasons he couldn't fully name, it felt monumental. A small bell announced each passing floor. People got off at the 10th and 12th floors, leaving just him and a woman who was absorbed in her phone. When the doors finally slid open on the 15th floor, the corridor beyond revealed warm light, sumptuous carpets, and the muffled clink of glassware. He stepped out. The restaurant's entrance featured tall, gold-framed doors, and a maitre greeted him with a courteous nod. "Good evening," said the maitre, bowing slightly. "May I have your name?" "Nathan Brooks," he replied, voice tight. "I believe the reservation is under Michael Woods." The maitre gave a polite smile and checked a tablet. "Yes, sir. Your party is waiting in the main dining area. Right this way." Nathan trailed behind, half expecting Michael to appear out of nowhere and give him a reassuring pat on the back. Instead, he walked alone through the softly lit restaurant, noticing each detail: the shining cutlery, the flicker of small table candles, the bustling waiters dressed in crisp black uniforms. The city skyline stretched behind floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a sparkling panorama that made it easy to forget all the stress of day-to-day life. He spotted a tall, graceful figure standing near a table by the window. She had a sleek red dress that highlighted the gentle curve of her shoulders. Her back was turned, so all he could see was a cascade of braids down her back and the elegant line of her neck. Something about her poised posture told him she was the one. He felt a small thrill of nerves, a sensation so unfamiliar that he had to gulp back a surge of panic. He whispered Michael's name under his breath, like a secret plea for moral support. A faint vibration from his pocket startled him. Fishing out the phone, he saw a message from Michael. "Be yourself, man. She's excited to meet you." Nathan couldn't decide if that was comforting or terrifying. With the phone still in hand, he heard the maitre clearing his throat politely, beckoning him onward. He approached the table, and she turned to face him. Their gazes locked for an instant. She had clear, warm eyes and a smile that seemed genuinely kind. Under the soft light, he noticed the small details that photos could never capture: a subtle nervousness in her expression, the way her earrings caught the glow of the overhead chandelier. "Hi," Nathan managed. "You must be Sarah." She extended her hand. "That's me. It's great to meet you. Michael's told me a lot." "Likewise," he said, returning her handshake gently. He caught the faint scent of her perfume, something floral but not overpowering. They settled at the table, the polished surface reflecting the flicker of a small candle between them. The waiter arrived to pour water, leaving them a moment of shared silence. Nathan tried to read Sarah's expression. She seemed confident, yet there was a gentle curiosity in her eyes, as if she were just as unsure of him as he was of her. "So," Nathan said, clearing his throat, "I guess Michael didn't share all my embarrassing stories, did he?" Sarah laughed softly, a sound that eased some of his tension. "He only said you're an old friend who's been too busy for a social life. I guess we both have that in common. He also mentioned that you appreciate city views, which is why we ended up at a place with these windows." Nathan couldn't stop himself from smiling. "Oh, he's clever. I've always liked big city views at night. They remind me there's more out there than just everyday stress." Sarah nodded, glancing behind her at the glittering skyline. "It really is beautiful, especially this time of year when everyone's ready for a fresh start." He was about to ask her more about what she did or how Michael knew her, when a clatter at a nearby table broke their bubble. A server scrambled to catch a falling glass, and Nathan instinctively jumped in his seat. His arm bumped his own water, which teetered on the brink. He snatched it just in time, cheeks warming in embarrassment. "Sorry," he mumbled. "I might be a bit jittery." Sarah offered an understanding smile. "It's all right. Honestly, I'm a little nervous too. Michael's been determined to set me up with someone for a while now. Work's been hectic, so meeting new people hasn't exactly been top of my list." Nathan let out a shaky exhale of relief. "At least we're on the same page." They delved into conversation about their mutual friend, how Michael had been Nathan's friend since college, how Sarah had met Michael at a charity event. Their stories wove little threads of connection, pulling them closer to each other's worlds. Nathan found himself occasionally stumbling over words, but managing to keep the conversation alive, driven by genuine curiosity. Midway through a discussion about a recent art show Michael had invited both of them to, separately, another commotion rippled through the restaurant. This time it was coming from a larger table near the center, where a couple of well-dressed patrons argued with the maître, voices getting louder with each passing second. Nathan watched from the corner of his eye, sensing the tension spike in the air. Sarah took a small sip of her water and glanced over. "I hope everything's okay. People can be unpredictable when they drink." A moment later, a man who seemed agitated abruptly spun, nearly colliding with a waiter carrying a tray of drinks. Crystal glasses wobbled, one tumbling off. In a flash of reflex, Nathan half stood from his chair, unsure exactly why or how he thought he could help. The glass shattered at the man's feet, spraying droplets across the polished floor. The man swore under his breath, turning a furious glare toward the waiter. The maître tried to calm him, voice controlled yet strained. Nathan shot Sarah a worried look. "Maybe we should keep our distance." But fate, or the poor geometry of the restaurant's layout, had other plans. The riled diner took 2 unsteady steps backward, then pivoted, and his gaze fell on Nathan. There was a tension there that made the hairs on the back of Nathan's neck stand up, as if he'd suddenly been roped into a confrontation he wanted no part of. Sarah leaned forward, ready to stand if needed, but the maître quickly intervened, steering the diner away with quiet authority. The crisis simmered, not quite extinguished, but at least distanced from Nathan and Sarah's table. Nathan felt his heart pounding again. He noticed Sarah's eyes, calm but alert, taking in the scene like a silent observer evaluating whether to stay or flee. He realized in the middle of the chaos that he wasn't alone in his anxious thoughts. The conversation resumed in subdued tones, though the tension lingered. Sarah's gaze drifted from Nathan to the messy aftermath near the center of the room. Crazy first date, huh? She remarked, trying to lighten the mood with a teasing half-smile. He managed a soft laugh. Let's hope it gets better from here. No sooner had he said that than another raised voice cut through the hushed atmosphere. The argument wasn't over. The disgruntled diner was now pointing an accusatory finger at a staff member, evidently furious over something about the bill or the service. Chairs scraped. The buzz of polite chatter dropped to a hush. Waiters flanked the area, wearing placating expressions. Nathan felt an instinctual need to stand up and intervene again, even though he had no real authority in this place. Perhaps it was just adrenaline. He caught Sarah's gaze, and in that shared moment he saw her concern mirrored back at him. Something flashed between them: understanding, empathy, the barest hint of solidarity. Maybe it was the strangeness of the situation that bound them, but he sensed a note of unspoken connection. In that silent exchange, he realized for the first time that he was determined to keep this date going, to see where it might lead, even if it meant navigating more awkward moments. He might have spent 10 years alone, but if he walked away now, he'd never know what could blossom from a night like this. Around them, waiters scrambled to defuse the situation. The raised voice gradually receded as the maître coaxed the agitator toward a more private corner. Yet tension remained, like a small storm cloud hovering over the otherwise luxurious room. Diners whispered. A staff member hurried to sweep up scattered glass shards. Nathan turned back to Sarah. She exhaled a gentle sigh, meeting his eyes with a careful smile. He reflected on how fleeting normalcy could be. 1 second you're laughing, the next you're on edge, not knowing what might happen. It was strange how chaos could bring two strangers closer, or, just as easily, drive them apart. He reached out hesitantly, grazing her fingertips with his own, hoping the small gesture said everything he couldn't find words for. Reassurance, apology for the tension, an unspoken wish to see her again. She squeezed his hand once, briefly, then pulled back, but her smile showed she appreciated the effort. That was enough to keep him hopeful. Somewhere behind them, the disgruntled diner was being coaxed to sit down, but the voices remained tense. Nathan realized the evening might not end with a smooth, picture-perfect goodbye. Still, he remained in his seat, focusing on Sarah's presence. She did the same, the corners of her eyes crinkling softly in a gesture of quiet resolve. Nothing here was certain, yet he felt with surprising clarity that he wanted to face it all. At that moment, as a fresh wave of raised voices rippled across the dining area, Sarah glanced at Nathan, and he looked right back. In her eyes he saw surprise, caution, maybe even a spark of intrigue. Everything else around them seemed to fade. Nathan and Sarah exchange a glance when the argument in the dining area escalates. In that look, Nathan senses this night might not be as simple as it seemed. Nathan froze for an instant, watching the heated argument flare across the restaurant. The man who had been bickering with the maître moments ago swung around, unsteady on his feet, and stumbled into a passing waiter. A tray clattered, drinks teetering precariously, and nearly spilled straight onto Sarah. Without thinking, Nathan pushed back his chair and stood up, one hand raised in a gentle attempt to protect her. "Whoa, careful," he said, voice low, though his pulse hammered in his ears. The rowdy diner muttered something about poor service, stepping forward with enough force that Nathan felt the jolt through his own shoulder. Sarah slid her chair back just in time, startled. The glass that had been on the verge of toppling crashed to the floor at Nathan's feet instead of onto her dress. A waiter rushed in, an apologetic and worried expression on his face as he bent to pick up the shards. The disgruntled customer's friend, another man in an expensive jacket, grabbed his companion's arm, hissing for him to calm down. Nathan drew a breath and spoke evenly to the agitated man. "Hey, let's not ruin everyone's night. They'll fix this if you give them a chance." His tone was surprisingly steady, though his stomach twisted with the possibility of this getting worse. He'd never been one to jump into random confrontations, but something about being here with Sarah brought out a need to do the right thing, to protect her from any lingering chaos. Sarah stayed a step behind him, eyes wide, one hand lightly touching his elbow as if to both steady and caution him. The diner curled his lip, but some of the initial fury in his eyes dissipated. Perhaps he recognized that a scene in this upscale setting wouldn't end well for him. The maître, still visibly tense, inserted himself between them, apologizing for the disturbance and urging the man back to his table. Eventually, the tension broke with a dismissive wave and a final glare. As soon as he was out of earshot, Sarah exhaled in relief. Nathan glanced over his shoulder to see that her cheeks still held a faint flush, whether from fear or embarrassment or both. He realized, a bit dazed, that his heart was still racing from the unexpected confrontation. A few nearby diners had watched everything with alarm or curiosity, but now most were turning back to their meals. The hushed music in the restaurant resumed its quiet lull, as if brushing aside the commotion. When he returned to the table, Sarah followed, carefully settling into her chair with a slight tremor still in her hands. "That was intense," she said quietly, looking at Nathan as if reevaluating who he was and how he'd jumped into the fray. "Thank you for stepping in. You didn't have to." Nathan lowered himself back into his seat, realizing his shirt collar felt suddenly too tight. "I'm just glad you didn't get drenched. Sorry that happened." A shaky laugh escaped her lips. "You shouldn't be sorry. It's not like you started it. Actually, I was impressed." Her words eased the tension twisting in his chest. He offered a small smile. "Guess I got tired of being a bystander. I've been a bystander in my own life for too long." She paused, curious. 10 years is a long time," she said, echoing their brief conversation earlier. "Michael mentioned you hadn't been on a date in a while, but I didn't realize it was that long." He nodded, feeling both embarrassed and oddly ready to share. It was a mix of things, long hours at work, family issues. I guess, after a few personal losses, I just shut down. I kept telling myself I'd deal with it tomorrow, and tomorrow kept slipping away. He stopped, noticing the slight sadness that crept into his voice. "Anyway, I'm sorry. This is supposed to be a nice evening." Her gaze softened. "You don't have to apologize for being honest. Besides, I get it. Life has a way of tossing us around, and sometimes the best we can do is just keep our heads above water." The sincerity in her tone made his chest ache. "What about you? Michael said you've got your hands full. I'm guessing you're not exactly rolling in free time either." Sarah exhaled slowly, toying with the edge of her napkin. "Yeah, I'm juggling some family responsibilities. Work's hectic, too. It's a big reason I haven't dated in a while. Whenever I think I might have a moment to just live, something crops up." Nathan nodded, understanding all too well. "It's nice knowing I'm not the only one who's felt that way." They both smiled, a fragile sense of camaraderie passing between them. The same waiter returned, carefully placing fresh glasses of water in front of them and apologizing once more for the spill and the disruption. Nathan noticed how the staff avoided lingering on the tension that had nearly exploded a few minutes earlier, trying to restore the restaurant's refined atmosphere. A gentle hush settled over their table. The city lights shimmered through the window behind Sarah, scattering reflections of gold and silver against the glass. Nathan glanced out at the skyline. "This view is pretty amazing," he said, hoping to lighten the mood further. Sarah turned, following his gaze. "It feels like you can see every flickering light in the whole city from here. I love being high up like this. Makes everything that's weighing on you feel a little smaller." He watched her profile against that backdrop, the faintest glow catching her features. She had an air of calm strength, even if her eyes betrayed the concerns running beneath. He wanted to ask more about the family responsibilities she'd mentioned, but he held back, not wanting to pry on the very first date. As they chatted about lighter topics, the best coffee spots in town, funny stories involving Michael's well-intentioned but sometimes clumsy matchmaking, they gradually relaxed. Nathan noticed that, despite the rocky interruption, he felt unusually at ease with her. They shared short laughs, each one chipping away at the tension that had laced the evening. When they finally stood to leave, the clock was creeping past a reasonable hour. Yet the restaurant was still half full of patrons lingering over desserts and conversations. Nathan helped Sarah into her coat, his fingertips brushing the soft fabric near her shoulder. A quick flash of something, gratitude maybe, sparked in her eyes. They walked to the elevator, sharing a warm little pocket of space that felt somehow intimate in the midst of the bustling city night. Outside, a crisp breeze swept along the street, carrying with it the faint glow of street lamps and a line of waiting taxis. The overhead sky was a stretch of deep navy, dotted with stars hidden by the city glare. Nathan was about to ask if she wanted to get coffee sometime soon, maybe if she wasn't too busy, when her phone rang. Sarah lifted it to her ear with an apologetic glance. "I'm sorry, let me just—" "Hello? Wait, calm down. What do you mean?" Her voice changed, and her shoulders stiffened. She turned slightly away from him, as if needing privacy, but there was no mistaking the distress on her face. Nathan lingered there, feeling a swirl of concern but not wanting to intrude. A few steps away, a doorman greeted passing guests. Vehicles rolled by on the street, and the hum of distant traffic filled the silence between them. Sarah pressed the phone closer to her ear, nodding mechanically, her free hand gripping the strap of her purse with white-knuckled tension. "I can come over," she said quietly after a moment. "No, I'll leave right now. Just hold on." She hung up, blinking against the glare of headlights that swung across the curb. There was a 1,000-yard stare in her eyes, something that overshadowed any small delight the evening had given her. Nathan stepped forward. "Hey, is everything okay?" She swallowed, forcing a polite but hurried smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry. Something came up. I have to go take care of it. Thank you so much for dinner." He nodded, uncertain, wanting to offer help but unsure if he'd be overstepping. "Of course. If you need anything—" She raised a gentle hand, almost in apology. "I'll be fine. I promise. This was—" Her voice trailed off as she broke his gaze, the streetlights casting sharp angles across her cheekbones. "I have to run, but I'll be in touch." Before he could say more, she stepped off the curb and raised a hand. A taxi pulled up with a squeak of its brakes, the rear door popping open. Sarah slipped inside, glancing back for just a second as if to give a silent goodbye. Then the door closed, and the taxi sped away into the stream of neon signs and taillights. Nathan stood on the sidewalk, uncertain and feeling the cool wind brush past him. Nathan watches Sarah disappear into a taxi, plagued by doubts. Did she genuinely enjoy the evening, or did something else just pull her away? Nathan stood by his living room window on a blustery afternoon, phone in hand, eyes scanning the sparse text she'd sent him days ago. "Thank you for dinner." That was it, nothing more. He'd replied with a simple, "Hope you're all right. Let me know if you need anything." Since then, radio silence. He let out a slow breath, shoulders drooping. He felt torn between sending another message or letting it go. 10 years was a long time to be out of practice, but something about Sarah's presence and the moment they'd shared outside the restaurant had made him feel so alive. Now, fear of coming across as desperate weighed on him. After all, she had left in a hurry, clearly rattled by something. The phone vibrated in his hand. Eager, he glanced at the screen, but it was only a notification from his boss reminding him about Monday's project deadline. His stomach sank a little. Work had become stressful lately. Long hours, high expectations, plus the mental clutter of overanalyzing every detail of that evening with Sarah. How could he concentrate on spreadsheets and conference calls when all he could think about was the abrupt change in her demeanor? He typed a new message. "Sarah, just checking in." Then deleted it. Typed again. "Hey Sarah, it's Nathan. Hope you're well." Delete. With a groan, he tossed the phone onto the couch. In the distance, the city skyline stood veiled by low-hanging winter clouds, a reminder of how quickly life could shift from bright possibility to uncertainty. Late that night, as he was buried in his laptop trying to finalize charts for his boss, the door buzzer startled him. Michael's voice filtered through the intercom, and Nathan buzzed him up. Moments later, his friend ambled in, shaking rain droplets off his jacket. "Couldn't sleep," Michael said with a shrug. "Figured you couldn't either. Got any coffee?" Nathan managed a faint smile. "Sure, I'll put a pot on." He led Michael to the small kitchen area, flicking on the light above the sink. The fluorescent glow gave the space an almost clinical brightness. Michael took one look at Nathan's disheveled hair and weary eyes. "You've been glued to that computer again, haven't you? Listen, you can't let the stress of work and the uncertainty about Sarah eat you alive." Nathan opened a cabinet and grabbed 2 mugs. "I don't know how not to let it. She's not responding. Maybe I pushed too hard, or maybe something else is going on. If she's in trouble, I want to help. But we barely know each other. Would I be overstepping? I have no clue." Michael's gaze softened. "I get it. But try not to assume the worst. She mentioned family stuff, right? That could be 100 different things. If she's anything like you, she might need some space before letting someone in." Nathan poured steaming coffee into the mugs. "And what if she's just not interested?" Michael tapped the counter. "Let her be the one to say that. You'll never know if you don't ask." They sipped the coffee in a contemplative silence. When Michael left, Nathan felt a little less alone but still hopelessly tangled in his own doubts. The next few days drifted by in a fog of endless emails and rushed commutes. The project Nathan was leading at the office grew more pressing. His boss threatened to reassign him if he didn't show faster results. His concentration shattered every time he glanced at his silent phone. By midweek, stress wrapped around him like a tight band across his chest, making even simple tasks feel monumental. He recalled a memory from years ago, triggered by a random office memo about bereavement policies. How could such a dry document bring back the day he'd lost his last close family member? The funeral, the deafening quiet afterward, the vow he'd made never to let anyone too close in case he had to go through that pain again. It struck him how foolish that vow seemed now. This longing to reach out to Sarah made him realize how tired he was of living behind walls. On Friday evening, he hurried out of the building, ignoring his boss's reminder about weekend tasks. Instead of going straight home, he wandered through downtown, letting the city lights and busy streets distract him. A chilly breeze gusted between skyscrapers, swirling leaves across the sidewalk. He walked aimlessly, passing shop windows and late-night cafes. The faces of strangers rushed by, couples holding hands, friends laughing, people alone in their own worlds. His steps eventually led him into a residential area near a small clinic where a row of pale lamps lit the path. He stopped when he saw a familiar figure stepping onto the sidewalk from the clinic's entrance. Dark braided hair, the same posture he recognized from their first date. His heart jolted. Sarah looked drained, shoulders drooped, eyes focused on something that weighed heavily on her mind. She didn't see him. She was too absorbed in whatever burden she carried. Nathan was across the street, half concealed by the shadow of a large tree, trying to decide whether to call out. Just when he mustered the courage to step forward, she flagged down a taxi almost frantically. The car pulled up, and Sarah slid into the back seat. A second later, she was gone, lost in the blur of taillights heading toward the main road. Nathan stood frozen, confusion and concern swirling inside him. Questions battered his thoughts. Why was she at a clinic? Was she hurt? Was someone she cared about ill? An ache of helplessness caught him by surprise. He wanted to run after that taxi, to ask her directly, to offer help. But he remained rooted to the sidewalk, uncertain. Approaching out of nowhere might come off as intrusive. He pulled out his phone and stared at Sarah's number. Should he text her that he'd seen her, that he was worried, or would that make him look like a stalker? Guilt bloomed for even thinking that, but the doubt was real. Sighing heavily, he decided he couldn't just leave it. Whatever was going on in Sarah's life, he wanted her to know she didn't have to carry it alone. He tapped out a hesitant message. "Sarah, I hope you're okay. I saw you outside a clinic tonight. Please let me know if you need anything." The words hovered on the screen, waiting for him to press send, but a new jolt of hesitation shot through him. Maybe she wouldn't appreciate knowing someone had witnessed her in a vulnerable moment. Exhaling, he let his thumb hover, then canceled the draft. Later, back at his apartment, the weight of the day crashed down on him. The living room felt sterile in its stillness, and the hum of the refrigerator seemed deafening. He called Michael without thinking twice. "Dude, it's late," Michael answered, voice gruff with half-sleep. "Something wrong?" Nathan paced in front of the window, looking out at the blinking radio towers. "I saw Sarah near a clinic. She looked upset. I didn't say anything because, I don't know, it felt weird just popping out of nowhere." Michael let out a groggy sigh. "Maybe she's dealing with a family emergency or a friend's in the hospital. Could be anything. But if you're worried, reach out, politely. Let her decide if she wants to tell you more." Nathan frowned, leaning his forehead against the window's cold glass. "I'm so torn between not wanting to intrude and wanting to help." "You have a good heart, Nathan. Don't overthink it to the point you do nothing. Worst case, she can say she's fine. At least then you'll know." They ended the call, and Nathan dropped onto his couch, mind buzzing with possibilities. A barrage of late-night work emails clambered for attention, but he couldn't focus. He pictured Sarah's tired expression, the slant of those overhead clinic lights illuminating shadows under her eyes. He tried to reason with himself. People have private struggles. She barely knows me. Still, the feeling that she might be facing something heavy alone nagged at him. After pacing restlessly, he turned back to his phone. Maybe a simple message would at least signal that he cared. "I'm thinking of you. Let me know if you're all right," he typed. He read it over twice. No hint of desperation, no demands. Just concern. A heartbeat later, he erased that too. Suddenly the phone rang, startling him so badly he nearly dropped it. The screen lit up with his supervisor's name. "Brooks," his boss barked when Nathan answered. "We need those figures finalized for Monday's pitch. I'm expecting you to have them ready by tomorrow. Are we clear?" Nathan gritted his teeth, glancing at the clock. "Yes, sir. I'll get them done." He ended the call, chest tight. Another wave of frustration hit, not just at his boss but at himself for letting personal worries derail him so easily. He had to find a balance somehow. But first, he had to see if he could reconnect with Sarah in a way that didn't scare her off. Resolving to act, he took a seat at the small desk by the window and pulled out a legal pad to quickly outline the numbers for Monday's pitch. After half an hour, he felt a semblance of calm, enough mental clarity to try again with Sarah. He picked up his phone one more time. He typed slowly, reading each word out loud in a whisper. "Hey, Sarah, it's Nathan. I hope you're doing okay. No pressure to respond if you're swamped, but I'd love to hear from you whenever you're ready." He hovered a moment. This time, there was no deletion. He was going to press send. Right as his thumb moved toward the screen, the phone buzzed in his hand, jolting him to a halt. An unknown number lit up the screen, sending his pulse racing. Nathan, drafting a new text to Sarah, this time determined to press send, pauses as an unknown number suddenly lights up his phone. Nathan's phone trembled in his hand as the unknown number flashed on the screen. He hesitated only a second before pressing it to his ear, heart pounding. He was ready for a telemarketer, a wrong number, or even a colleague from work. But when he murmured a cautious, "Hello?" the hesitant reply on the other end made his pulse jump. "Nathan, It's Sarah." She sounded a bit out of breath, her voice subdued as if she were calling from a quiet corner. Relief hit him with such force that he nearly dropped his phone. He braced a hand against his desk, trying to steady his voice. "Sarah, thank God. Are you all right?" "I'm sorry I haven't reached out," she said, each word tinged with apprehension. "I got your messages. I've been dealing with something. A family issue." It was the middle of a busy workday, with phones ringing and people moving about in the office beyond his cubicle walls. Nathan closed his eyes, letting her words wash over him, a mixture of worry and relief swirling in his chest. "I was worried. You left so abruptly that night. You don't have to tell me everything, but I'm here if you need help." She exhaled, a fragile pause. "My aunt, Gloria, she's been sick. Doctors say her condition's getting worse, and I've been juggling medical appointments trying to figure out how to pay for everything. I'm sorry for disappearing like that. It's been a lot." "I'm so sorry," he said, fighting the urge to pepper her with questions. "That must be overwhelming." "It is, but I'm managing," she replied, though her tone wasn't entirely convincing. "I just wanted to let you know it's not that I didn't like you or anything like that. I've got a lot on my plate." Nathan dared a small, trembling smile, glad she couldn't see the embarrassment that heated his cheeks. "I really appreciate you telling me. If there's anything I can do, I want to help." Before she could respond, a commotion stirred near his workstation. He heard the distinct bark of his boss's voice echoing along the hallway. Something about an urgent conference call. The urgency in that tone cut through the office's usual buzz, pulling at him. "Nathan!" his boss called from across the open floor, loud enough to carry over the cubicle dividers. "I need you now!" Nathan tensed, lowering the phone slightly. "Sarah, can you hold on a sec?" He hovered near his desk, feeling trapped between the two demands, the conversation he'd longed to have and a work crisis that wouldn't wait. "Is everything okay?" she asked. He exhaled. "Not exactly. My boss is losing it over some project, but I'm listening, I promise." With a hand pressed against his ear to block out the noise, he tried to focus on her voice, stepping into a sliver of hallway that offered a little more privacy. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I can call later if you're busy." The clang of a file drawer nearby made him flinch. He caught a glimpse of his boss heading his way, phone in hand, frustration etched across his face. No, it's fine," Nathan said in a hushed tone. "Just give me 5 minutes. I really want to hear what's going on." He inched past a cluster of filing cabinets and into a deserted corridor. The hush here felt like temporary sanctuary from the frantic scurry of the main workspace. Leaning against the wall, he strained to hear Sarah's breathing, certain her world must be equally chaotic. She spoke softly. "I might have to travel for her treatments, or at least help her get to the specialists. Money's tight, and some days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. I'm sorry if this is too much all at once." "It's not," he said firmly. "I'm just sorry you're going through this. If you need help, you can talk to me. Financially, emotionally, anything. I just want to be there." His heart thudded against his ribs at the admission. 10 years he'd shut the door on intimacy, and suddenly here he was, ready to upend his life if it might ease hers. The intensity of that realization filled him with both resolve and unease. Was he rushing in, or was it right to offer support to someone who clearly mattered to him? Sarah's hesitation crackled through the phone line. "Nathan, I'm not sure. We barely know each other. I don't want to put you in a tough spot. My aunt is everything to me. She raised me after my parents passed. I don't want to rely on you." "It's not a burden," he insisted. "Sarah? Nathan!" The bellow from behind made him turn, phone still pressed to his ear. His boss marched down the corridor, face set in an impatient scowl. "Meeting starts in 60 seconds. Where are you?" Nathan gestured helplessly. "Just a moment, please." he mouthed back. Then he spoke quickly into the phone. "Sarah, I'm sorry. My boss. This is urgent. But please, can we—" The line went silent. The only sound was distant office chatter and the dull hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He pulled the phone back, saw the call had ended. For a second, he just stood there, the frustration of being cut off pressing on his chest like a weight. Michael approached from a nearby desk, eyebrows raised. "That was Sarah on the phone, wasn't it?" he asked in a hushed tone. He must have heard enough scraps of conversation to piece things together. Nathan nodded, sliding the phone into his pocket. "I finally got through to her, but work emergency. She just hung up. I'm worried it sounded like I wasn't interested in what she was saying." Michael put a hand on his shoulder. "Go do what you gotta do. Talk to her after. She'll understand, right?" Nathan tried to shrug off the tension. "I hope so. She's dealing with a sick aunt, serious financial issues, and I'm stuck in these constant crises at the office." His shoulders sagged, voice turning grim. It's not exactly the ideal scenario for starting something new. Michael's look was sympathetic. "Most of life isn't ideal, man. But if you want this to work, you'll find a way. Now hurry. Your boss looks like he's about to blow a gasket." With a last anxious glance at his phone, Nathan forced himself into the conference room. The hour-long meeting felt like a marathon. Charts flickered across a screen, slides and projections that normally would hold all his attention, but he couldn't stop replaying Sarah's voice in his head. She had sounded so alone, so worn down by worry. Finally, the meeting ended, leaving a swirl of demands for immediate revisions on their pitch. Nathan gathered his notes, glancing at the time. Could he slip away and call her back? The second he stepped out, though, his boss cornered him with another stack of documents, eyes practically glowing with expectation. "These need to be reviewed and revised tonight," the man said crisply. "I'm serious, Brooks. Don't even think of leaving until it's done." Nathan clenched his jaw, but he nodded. Putting up a fight here might risk his position, a position he needed if he was ever going to help Sarah, or even keep a stable foundation for himself. It was well after dark when he finally emerged from the building, the lamps outside giving the sidewalk a lonely sheen. He pressed Sarah's number, noticing with grim resignation that it was past 10 o'clock. Her phone went to voicemail. Swallowing the knot in his throat, he left a message. Quiet, gentle words. He tried not to sound desperate. "Hey, it's me. I'm sorry about earlier. Work sort of blindsided me. I'm here whenever you want to talk. Please don't hesitate, okay?" He ended the call with a sigh, heading out into the crisp winter air. Overhead, a canopy of stars blinked behind drifting clouds. The walk to the metro station seemed longer than usual, every step burdened by the fear that he'd messed things up again. Hours later, while he was in his pajamas and sorting through more spreadsheets, a text ping startled him. He yanked the phone close, heart leaping at Sarah's name. "I appreciate your offer, but I'm fine. Let's talk soon," she'd written. He chewed on his bottom lip, reading it twice. The words felt careful, almost polite to the point of distancing herself. "I'm fine," she said. That never really meant anyone was fine. His relief at hearing from her was overshadowed by the sense that she was struggling more than she let on. Slumping back on his couch, he tried to figure out how to respond. Every draft he conjured felt invasive or too pushy. So he let the phone fall to his side, unsettled, wishing there were a clear way forward. If she wanted to talk, she would. If she needed him to step in, he'd do it in a heartbeat. But what if she never asked? He stared at the phone for a long time, torn between giving her space and pushing to help. Nathan stares at the phone, torn. Should he press her for details or respect her apparent wish to handle it alone? Nathan woke up earlier than usual, a restless energy pulsing under his skin. Outside, a weak winter sun bathed the streets in a pale, hesitant light. He had decided. No more staring at his phone, no more agonizing over texts left unread. The polite distance Sarah had maintained for days gnawed at his thoughts every morning and night. She was struggling, and he couldn't just stand by. He understood boundaries, but something in his gut told him her quiet pride was preventing her from asking for help she probably needed. He got dressed in the simplest clothes he had, jeans and a sweater, and hopped into his car, driving straight to the nearest store that stocked fresh produce and bouquets. As he maneuvered through the produce aisle, he thought about the little details he'd gleaned from their limited conversations. Sarah liked berries and fresh greens, or so she'd joked once about trying to eat healthier amid stress. He found himself picking out blueberries, spinach, and a few other items he hoped might encourage her to cook something nourishing. The cart felt heavy with the weight of a decision he'd made without her blessing. Would she see this as kindness or intrusion? Despite his nerves, he pressed on and selected a modest bouquet of bright sunflowers. They weren't overly romantic, but they radiated warmth and cheer, an antidote to the gloom that might be hanging over her place. Checking out, he felt self-conscious, imagining the cashier's glance at the random combination of groceries and a bouquet. He mumbled a polite, "Thank you," and hurried out, anxious to put this plan into action before he lost his nerve. From bits of conversation and one address glimpse he'd caught on a stray document in her car, he was pretty sure he knew which townhouse belonged to her aunt. The plan was simple in his head: ring the doorbell, present the groceries with a friendly greeting, and offer a listening ear. He didn't expect a grand welcome, maybe just a chance to tell her he wanted to be helpful, not overbearing. When he pulled up in front of a modest row house, the curtains were drawn, and the paint around the windows showed signs of wear. A quiet street, lined with half-melted snow piled against the sidewalks, lent the block a subdued feel. His heart thudded as he carried the bags in one arm and the bouquet in the other, stepping onto the creaking porch steps. He rang the doorbell, hearing the faint echo of chimes inside. Silence. Then a muffled shuffle. He swallowed, glancing at his phone to check the time. It was almost noon. The door opened a crack, revealing a man with a wary expression. He had the build of someone who could toss a grown man down the steps if provoked, and right now he looked ready to do just that. "Yeah?" The man's tone was blunt, eyes flicking to the flowers and groceries in Nathan's arms. "Who are you?" Nathan tried for a smile, though his insides twisted. "I'm Nathan. I'm a friend of Sarah's. I just wanted to drop these off. Is she home?" The man's brow furrowed. "Friend of Sarah's? Never seen you before." He opened the door a few more inches but kept his body angled to block Nathan's entrance. "What's all that stuff?" "Groceries," Nathan said, carefully holding them up so they wouldn't slip. He offered a quick glance at the flowers. "And I brought these too. It's just a little something to help out. I know things have been tough." The man's face hardened. "You think we're a charity case or something? Coming here unannounced with flowers and food? Sarah doesn't need handouts." His voice rose with each sentence, and Nathan felt the tension coil tight. "No, it's not like that," Nathan tried to explain, adjusting his grip on the bags. "I just wanted to help. I'm not here to pity anyone, I promise. Sarah told me she's going through some difficulties, so I thought—" "You thought what?" The man's glare was unwavering. "That you could waltz in here, play hero, and fix everything? Because that's not happening." Nathan's neck prickled with discomfort. The wind rustled the small bouquet of sunflowers, making them tremble like a nervous gesture. He kept his voice level, though. "Look, I'm not trying to fix everything. I know it's complicated. I just wanted to show that I care." "Who are you to care?" the man shot back. "We've been dealing with our own issues just fine. Now take your groceries and go." The raw hostility in his words left Nathan unsure whether to stand firm or back off. He fought the urge to simply apologize and retreat. Before he could decide, footsteps sounded behind the man, and a familiar voice spoke up. "Calm down, Tony. I know him." Sarah stepped into the doorway, pushing the door open wide enough for Nathan to see her clearly. She wore an oversized sweatshirt, her hair swept into a messy bun. Stress weighed heavily on her eyes. but there was no mistaking the mix of surprise and embarrassment that colored her expression when she registered the groceries and flowers in Nathan's arms. "Sarah," he breathed in relief, but the tension in the air still felt thick. "I didn't mean to ambush you. I was worried, and I thought maybe some healthy food and a little brightness wouldn't hurt." Her cousin, Tony, shifted to the side, crossing his arms as Sarah sighed. She raked her gaze over the bags, then the flowers. "You really didn't have to do this." "I know," Nathan said, trying to keep his voice gentle. "But I wanted to." Tony glanced at Sarah, then scowled at Nathan. "Next time, maybe text or call first. We've got enough on our plates without strangers showing up." Nathan nearly apologized, but Sarah cut in, placing a hand on Tony's arm. "Hey, could you give us a minute? I'll talk to him." Tony studied Nathan for a few seconds before snorting and stepping back from the door. Sarah slid outside onto the porch, letting the door click shut behind her. She crossed her arms against the chill and looked down at the bags of groceries Nathan still clutched. He cleared his throat. "I really am sorry if this is too forward. I just hated the thought of you worrying about food or anything else. It's just some basics: milk, bread, vegetables, a few things you might find useful." She pushed stray hair behind her ear, looking a mixture of touched and exasperated. "It was sweet, but you have to understand, my family's been through a lot. We're protective of each other, especially Tony. He doesn't trust easily." Her gaze dropped. "He's had his share of heartbreak and stress." Nathan let that sink in, nodding slowly. "I get it. Really, I do. I didn't mean to intrude. I just care about you and wanted to help, even a little." A small, weary smile tugged at her lips. "I appreciate that, but next time, give me a heads up. I'm trying to juggle my aunt's health situation, Tony's anxiety, and my own worries. Surprises aren't always good." He could see the fatigue etched on her face. His heart ached to ease some of that burden, but he also recognized that pushing too hard might only make her shut down. "I understand. I'm sorry." He softly extended the bouquet toward her. "Here, maybe these can still brighten your day." She accepted the sunflowers, brushing her fingertips over the yellow petals. "They're lovely. Thank you." She parted her lips as if to say more, then hesitated, glancing toward the closed door. "It's been tough around here. Gloria's on medication, but the costs keep rising. We're waiting on more tests, all while trying to figure out how to pay for them." Her voice caught, and she exhaled shakily. "Tony's protective because we've been scammed before. False promises of help that never came through." Nathan's chest tightened with empathy. "I'm really sorry. If there's anything else I can do, research or fundraisers or just listening, I'm here." She nodded, the corners of her mouth dipping slightly in a sad smile. "I'll keep that in mind. For now, though, I think Tony and I need to figure some of this out ourselves. I don't want to drag you into my problems. We barely know each other." He reached out, wanting to take her hand, but she was juggling the bouquet, and he didn't want to push boundaries again. "I know we barely know each other, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be part of your life, even if it's just offering a shoulder to lean on." Something in her gaze softened. For a moment it felt like the two of them were shielded from all the chaos by the small patch of porch beneath their feet. "You're kind," she said at last, voice low, "but I need to handle a lot of this on my own, at least for now." Nathan fought the disappointment building in his chest. He forced a gentle smile. "All right, but promise me if you reach a point where you need help, you'll call or text. Anything." She dipped her head. "I promise." Then, cradling the sunflowers, she reached for the doorknob behind her. "Thank you again." He hesitated, wanting to say something that would mend the tension, but before he could speak, the door swung open a crack, revealing Tony's glaring eyes. Sarah slipped halfway inside, nodding in a gesture of finality, and Nathan felt that slight distance between them grow. "Let me know if you need anything," he repeated softly, stepping back as she closed the door behind her. Before Nathan can protest, Sarah slips back inside, leaving him on the porch feeling more shut out than ever. Nathan found himself rifling through a mountain of paperwork on his desk at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, the office lights humming overhead. His boss had dropped yet another urgent request on him that afternoon, and the pressure to deliver immediate results was pushing him close to his limit. Normally, he would have just powered through, but tonight his mind kept drifting away, replaying the tense moment on Sarah's front porch when Tony had all but escorted him off the property. He kept glancing at his phone, half hoping for a sign of forgiveness or a simple text from her. Nothing came. On a whim, he opened his email and clicked on a draft he'd been composing for days. It was intended for a potential client his boss had all but demanded he court. His eyes skipped over the polite business phrases, unable to focus, the words blending into each other. Sarah's troubled expression kept flashing in his thoughts. He wondered if he'd ever see her smile freely again. When he finally shut down his computer and left the building, the city outside felt strangely still. The usual traffic had died down, and a soft drizzle fell under the yellowish glow of street lamps. He tugged his coat tighter, cursing himself for how he let every missed text or call from Sarah rattle him. He walked to the parking lot, noticing his reflection in the damp sheen on the pavement. A man who once excelled at shutting people out was now desperate for a way back into someone's life. The following morning brought more of the same. He arrived at the office only to find his boss waiting by his cubicle with a stack of new files. "Brooks," the man said curtly, "we're falling behind. I need your updated figures by tomorrow, and triple-check your data. I won't tolerate slip-ups." Nathan nodded, half listening, mind once again flirting with the idea of calling Sarah. He felt guilt churn in his stomach for letting personal issues affect his work. But how could he ignore the sinking feeling that something was seriously wrong in her world? Around midday, Michael stopped by Nathan's desk, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look terrible," he remarked, shoving 1 cup into Nathan's hand. "Did you pull another all-nighter?" Nathan took a slow sip, grateful for the caffeine. "Yeah, this project's dragging, and I can't stop thinking about Sarah. I showed up unannounced to help and it blew up in my face." Michael slid into the empty chair beside Nathan's desk. She probably appreciated the gesture deep down, but from the sound of it, her cousin's protective, and Sarah's dealing with a lot of stress. That's a rough combination. "Tell me about it," Nathan muttered. "She's still not responding much. I get these short, polite texts that say she's fine, but I know she's not." Michael frowned. "You tried calling her again?" Nathan shook his head. "I want to respect her space, but it's killing me to stand by, especially if she's in over her head." Michael drank his coffee thoughtfully. "Maybe wait a few days. Let things cool. See if she reaches out. If not, maybe you can try a gentler approach. Don't show up with flowers again," he added with a wry grin. Nathan managed a half-hearted chuckle. Lesson learned. They parted ways, each returning to the grind of their respective jobs. The hours blurred by in a staccato of phone calls, emails, and data entry. By evening, Nathan's eyes stung from staring at spreadsheets. He considered leaving early to clear his head, but he was behind on deadlines. A mounting sense of anxiety weighed on him. Late that night, he received a single-line message from Sarah. "Hope you had a good day." Her words felt forced, like she was trying to be polite but keep a cautious distance. He stared at the text, wrestling with a reply. Part of him wanted to jump in with a dozen questions about her aunt, her cousin, her finances, her mental state. But another part warned he might scare her off if he pressed too hard. He typed, "It was okay, just busy at work. How are you?" Then, with trembling fingers, he hit send. Minutes passed. An hour crept by. No answer. Resigned, he tossed his phone onto the couch and buried himself in overdue paperwork until sleep overtook him. In the days that followed, nothing changed. Sarah maintained a calm, almost stoic front in her sporadic texts. Nathan found himself making small mistakes at the office, typos in his reports, forgetting a crucial meeting invite. His boss caught wind of his distraction and confronted him near the break room one afternoon, eyebrows arched in disapproval. "What's going on with you lately, Brooks?" the man asked, arms folded. "Your performance is slipping." Nathan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some personal stuff. It won't happen again." "You'd better fix it," his boss warned, then strode away without waiting for a reply. Nathan wanted to protest that it wasn't a matter of flipping a switch. He was trying to compartmentalize, but the worry ate at him day and night. The more Sarah pulled back, the more he felt on edge and the more his work suffered. He repeated to himself that he had to get it together. He couldn't save Sarah or be there for her if he couldn't even hold his own life steady. One evening, after a particularly draining shift, he slumped onto his couch at home, phone balanced on his chest. His heartbeat felt too loud in the quiet apartment. On impulse, he dialed Sarah. He expected it to go to voicemail. Instead, she picked up on the second ring, her voice brittle and tight. "Hi, Nathan." He released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Hey, sorry for calling so late. I haven't heard from you and I was getting worried." Silence pulsed over the line. Then she sighed. "I've been stressed. Gloria's test results came back bad. The bills keep piling up and Tony's on edge about everything. I've been working overtime too. It feels like there's no air left to breathe." Nathan closed his eyes, imagining her pacing in a dimly lit room, shadows flickering across her face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wish I could help. I can chip in, lend you money, anything. I don't want you to face this alone." Her voice turned sharp, a fragile edge threatening to break. "Stop offering money. I told you, I don't want your charity. This is my family and I have to do what it takes to keep things afloat." His chest tightened. "Sarah, it's not charity if it's offered out of care. You're so worried about doing it all yourself that you're pushing people away." "Don't tell me how I feel," she snapped. "You have no idea what it's like to depend on someone who fails you. I'm not going to risk that again." He sucked in a breath, trying to keep his voice steady, but old wounds flared. "I know about loss, too, and it hurts to see you shutting me out. You think I haven't lost people? That I haven't been scared to let anyone in? Why do you think I went a decade without so much as a date?" She laughed bitterly. "Then you should understand why I can't just throw my burdens at you. If I fail, I fail. At least it won't drag you down, too." Her words hit like a punch. He felt anger surge, a mix of frustration and heartbreak. "You're not even giving me a chance. You say you want someone, but the moment help is offered, you slam the door." "What do you want from me?" Her voice cracked. "I'm drowning here. I don't have the energy to soothe your feelings on top of everything else." "Then tell me what you need," he shouted, voice echoing in his empty living room. "I'm standing here, ready to do whatever I can, and you won't let me in. You'd rather suffer alone." She went silent, breath ragged. He could almost hear her blinking back tears. When she spoke, her tone was ice. "Maybe you should stop trying. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Good night, Nathan." The click of the call ending sent a chill through him. He stared at his phone, a storm of guilt and anger raging inside. He typed a single message. "I'm here if you change your mind. I care about you." Whether it was the right thing to say or not, he had no clue. She didn't reply. An hour later, the phone dinged. His heart leapt as he grabbed it, only to feel it sink again when he read her terse reply. "Maybe we both need time apart to figure out what we really want." Days rolled by in a blur of half-hearted mornings and sleepless nights. Nathan caught himself slipping further into old habits, avoiding social calls, working late at the office, keeping his thoughts locked on a loop about Sarah. He'd go entire days without hearing from her, and each hour that passed without a single text or call felt like a slow twist of the knife. Whenever a new message popped up on his phone, his heart pounded, only to plunge again when he saw it was just a work email or a reminder from the electric company. Sarah, for her part, kept to herself. She sent brief updates if he reached out, mentioning that Gloria was due for more medical tests, that finances had grown even tighter. But she never ventured into personal territory, never let slip a shred of emotion. Each guarded note ended with a polite, "Thanks for caring," as if she was trying to stay polite while inching away. Some nights, Nathan wrestled with guilt for pushing her so hard. Other nights, he seethed with frustration at how quickly she shut him down. He tried to pour himself into his job, hoping the mental focus would dull the ache of missing her. But work had lost its usual momentum. He felt like a piece of driftwood in a fast-moving current. Deadlines piled up, and the quality of his presentations slipped. His boss noticed, of course. One Friday afternoon, after a particularly disorganized meeting, the man cornered Nathan outside the conference room. "This can't go on," he said, voice low but stern. "I need you performing at your best, Brooks, not spinning your wheels. Either you get it together, or I'll have to assign this project to someone else." Nathan stood there, tie crooked, papers clutched in hand. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his position, and with it, any chance of being stable enough to help Sarah. The fear churned in his gut. He swallowed his pride and muttered an agreement to do better. But as his boss walked off, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was unraveling one thread at a time. That evening, Michael arrived at Nathan's apartment unannounced. He rapped on the door and let himself in, carrying takeout containers filled with something that smelled spicy and comforting. "Please tell me you didn't have dinner yet," Michael said, half a joke, half a plea. He closed the door behind him, dropping his keys onto the counter. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, letting a grim smile flicker across his face. "Nope, I was about to order pizza, or maybe skip dinner altogether. Haven't decided yet." Michael frowned, surveying the mess of documents scattered across the coffee table. "You look like you're running on fumes. When's the last time you went outside for something other than work?" Nathan shrugged, which was answer enough. Michael set the takeout down, waving him over to the small kitchen table. "Sit, eat, then we talk." The aroma of ginger and garlic teased Nathan's appetite awake. They dug into the food, forks scraping the plastic containers, steam fogging up the lids. For a while, they talked idly about old college memories, TV shows they used to watch, anything to avoid the real issues. But eventually, Michael set his fork aside and cleared his throat. "I'm worried about you," he said plainly. "You're not yourself. What's the plan here? Are you just waiting around for Sarah to magically come back?" Nathan sighed, pushing half-eaten noodles around. "I can't force her to talk to me. I tried giving her groceries, offering financial help. She pushed me away. I tried giving her space. She barely responds. What else can I do?" Michael leaned forward. "I get that. But sometimes people need a little breathing room before they can come around again. Maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe she's terrified she'll disappoint you. Have you considered that she might want to reach out but feels guilty or ashamed?" Nathan stared at him. "She's got nothing to be ashamed of. I just want to help." "People have their own reasons, man," Michael replied gently. "That's why I'm staging a tiny get-together tomorrow at my place. I'm inviting her, and I'm inviting you. No pressure. Maybe if the two of you see each other without the weight of her front porch drama or your workplace chaos, you can actually talk." Nathan's heart thumped with cautious hope. "You really think she'll come?" Michael's eyes flickered with a confident grin. "She texted me back, said she'd think about it. That's a start, right?" Nathan exhaled, pushing his plate aside. "It's more than I've had in weeks." The next evening, Nathan arrived at Michael's small condo, feeling awkwardly overdressed in a collared shirt he'd picked out at the last second. A mild warmth filled the living room from the overhead lamps, and soft music hummed from a speaker in the corner. Michael had laid out some snacks and a pitcher of iced tea on the coffee table. The place smelled of citrus air freshener and a hint of sautéed onions from the kitchen. Half a dozen people mingled, chatting about sports or random new shows. Nathan recognized some as Michael's co-workers, folks he'd met once or twice. He tried to join in their conversation, but every thought circled back to whether Sarah would show up. After about 30 minutes, his heart gave a small jolt when he heard Michael at the door, greeting someone. Sarah stepped in, eyes scanning the room with the same guarded caution Nathan had seen on her porch. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair swept into a low ponytail. The moment her gaze found Nathan's, she paused. He smiled tentatively, and she offered a fragile smile in return. It wasn't much, but it felt like the first sign of spring after a long winter. Michael, ever the host, steered her gently toward Nathan and then excused himself to chat with other guests. An awkward moment of silence settled between them, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the background. Nathan cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." She shrugged, glancing at her own hands. Michael said it would be a small gathering. It seemed like a safe place to at least say hi. She took a breath, lifting her eyes. "I owe you an apology for how things ended last time we talked. I was harsh." Nathan hesitated, searching her expression. "We both said things in the heat of the moment. I'm sorry too. It's been hard for me to keep my own stress at bay. Work's been rough, but it's nothing compared to what you're facing." Sarah nodded, fiddling with the cuff of her sweater. She looked tired. The shadows under her eyes were more pronounced, as though she hadn't slept well in days. "My aunt's condition is declining. We got more bad news. And yeah, money's tighter than ever. Sometimes it feels like I'm walking on a high wire with no net." Nathan itched to offer help again, but he remembered how fiercely she'd resisted. Instead, he took a step closer, voice gentle. "I'm sorry you're going through that. If you ever want a friend to lean on, or just someone to grab a coffee with, I'm here." She studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether to trust his words. Before she could respond, Michael came bustling over with plates in hand. "Food's ready," he announced, beaming in the way only a hopeful matchmaker could. "Come on, I made something special in the kitchen." They joined the rest of the guests at the small dining table, where Michael had set out a simple but hearty meal of roasted chicken, vegetables, and freshly baked bread. Conversation flowed, and for a brief time the tension between Nathan and Sarah dissipated beneath shared laughter. Nathan listened to her comments on some funny anecdote Michael told about their college days, and he sensed a warmth in her tone he hadn't heard since their first date. But just when the evening seemed to be loosening the knots of anxiety in everyone's shoulders, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and the shift in her expression was immediate. Her face paled, eyes clouding with dread. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "I have to take this." Rising from the table, she stepped out onto Michael's tiny balcony. Nathan caught sight of her pressed against the railing, phone glued to her ear, anxiety evident in her tense stance. Michael eyed Nathan, who took that as permission to follow. He slipped out onto the balcony just as Sarah ended the call, her hand trembling slightly at her side. "Bad news?" he asked softly. She inhaled sharply, struggling to keep her voice even. "Gloria's test results came in. It's not good. They're talking about a more invasive procedure, more costs, more everything." A wave of empathy crashed over him. "I'm so sorry." She bit her lip, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't lose her. She's the last piece of family I have." He placed a tentative hand on her shoulder. "You won't be alone, Sarah." Inside, the voices at the table had died down, as if everyone sensed the sudden change in the air. Michael stood at the threshold of the balcony, concern etched across his face. The rest of the guests tried not to stare, whispering among themselves. Sarah swallowed, blinking back tears. I need to leave. I have to get to the hospital." She stepped away, and Nathan followed, worry twisting inside him. Michael intercepted them, gently laying a hand on Nathan's arm. In a hushed voice, he murmured, "Go, be with her. Don't let her face it by herself. Nathan hesitated at the door, not sure if Sarah would want him there. She pulled on her coat, eyes distant, mind clearly racing with the worst-case scenarios. Then she looked up, meeting his gaze. Grief and uncertainty flared across her expression, but she gave a small nod. Permission he didn't dare question. They hurried toward the exit, but at the last moment, Michael leaned in and spoke quietly in Nathan's ear. "If you let her walk away again, you'll regret it." Nathan and Sarah rode together in tense silence, the hum of the car's heater the only sound punctuating the winter night. He glanced at her every few moments, fingers tight around the steering wheel, heart still pounding from the rush of leaving Michael's place. She sat with her coat draped over her lap, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on something distant outside. Streetlights flickered across her face, painting fleeting shadows of worry he wished he could erase. When they finally pulled into the hospital lot, Sarah jumped out almost before the car had fully stopped. Nathan hurried after her, jogging past rows of cars as she strode to the automatic doors, her breath coming in shallow bursts. A faint antiseptic smell clung to the corridor they entered, intensifying his sense of urgency. She paused only long enough to check a chart at the reception desk, then marched toward a specific waiting area down the hall. Nathan followed, scanning the faces of tired relatives, anxious patients, and weary nurses bustling around. In the corner, Sarah's cousin Tony was seated, arms folded, staring at the floor. He looked up when Sarah approached, and relief flickered in his eyes. "Any news?" Sarah asked, voice quivering. Tony stood, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. "They're running more tests on Gloria now. A nurse said the doctor would talk to us as soon as there's something definite." His gaze darted briefly to Nathan before returning to Sarah. She took a turn for the worse. They had to stabilize her again. Sarah sank into a chair, pressing the back of her hand to her mouth. "I should have been here," she whispered. "I left her alone." "You did all you could," Tony murmured. "Don't beat yourself up." Nathan settled beside Sarah, uncertain whether Tony would rebuff him. But for once, Tony seemed too exhausted to protest. He sank back into his seat and stared ahead, silent. Across from them, a vending machine hummed, offering silent temptation of stale coffee and snacks. Minutes stretched into an hour, each second weighed down by worry. Sarah rubbed her arms to ward off a chill that seemed to come from within. A nurse eventually emerged from the double doors, scanning the waiting area. Recognizing Sarah, she approached. "She's stable for now," the nurse said gently. "The doctor's finishing his evaluation. He'll be out in a bit." Sarah let out a shaky breath, nodding. "Thank you." Once the nurse vanished, Tony muttered something about needing air and disappeared down the corridor. Silence lingered between Sarah and Nathan. In the corner, a television quietly ran headlines that neither of them paid attention to. Nathan edged closer. "Do you want something to drink? Water or maybe a coffee?" She raised her eyes, the faintest gratitude in their depths. A coffee would be nice. He rose and crossed to the vending machine, fumbling with small change. The machine whirred, delivering 2 cups of mediocre coffee. He returned and placed 1 cup carefully in her hands. She murmured a soft, "Thank you," and took a sip, wincing at the taste. "I know it's not great," he said, managing a weak smile, "but it's warm." She nodded, gaze drifting over the greenish walls and flickering ceiling lights. "I appreciate it," she said, voice subdued. Then her tone took on a sharper edge. "You didn't have to come here, you know. This is my problem, my family." He inhaled slowly, remembering all the times she'd pushed him away. But he refused to leave now, not when she was at her most vulnerable. "I wanted to," he said simply. "I care." She looked down at her coffee. "Nathan, I don't know if you realize how complicated this is. Gloria might need more procedures, and we're already drowning in bills. It's hard enough to breathe with all this." He heard the unspoken worry. Who was going to shoulder the load? They sipped in silence. Occasionally, an announcement over the intercom would jar them back to the present moment. At one point, Sarah sighed and stood, setting her coffee aside. "I'm going to check with the nurse again," she said. "You can stay here or not. It's up to you." He stood immediately. "I'll come. I won't hover, but I'll be nearby." She gave him a look that might have been equal parts frustration and reluctant acceptance. In small steps, they navigated the hallway to the nurse's station. Sarah asked for more information, but all they learned was that the doctor was reviewing additional test results. With nothing else to do but wait, they drifted back to their seats. A short while later, Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He winced, recognizing the number. His boss. He hesitated, torn between ignoring it and risking another confrontation or stepping aside. Sarah noticed his anxious expression. "Work?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "I'm sorry. I have to at least let them know where I am." He stepped into a corner near a row of empty chairs. "Hello?" His boss's voice was tense. "Brooks, I needed that report by tonight. Where are you?" Nathan glanced toward Sarah, who was hunched forward, face buried in her hands. "I'm at the hospital," he said flatly. "Family emergency." The words tumbled out unplanned, but he realized he meant them. If Sarah wasn't technically his family, she was close enough to his heart to count. His boss sniffed, clearly unimpressed. "So who's wrapping up the project? This can't wait." Nathan closed his eyes, anger bristling. "I'll do what I can, but I'm not leaving. Not tonight." The line went silent a moment. Then, with cold disapproval, his boss muttered, "Fine, but you'd better be ready for a meeting first thing tomorrow." No excuses, Brooks. Before Nathan could reply, the call ended. Tension buzzed through his body. For so long, his job had been his anchor, his identity. Now it felt like a chain. He returned to find Sarah watching him, eyes tinged with concern. "You should probably go," she said, voice softer than usual. "I don't want you losing your job over this." He sank down beside her. "It's just a job, not more important than a human life." Her breath caught. She stared at the floor, struggling with some internal argument. "Nathan, that's sweet, but I don't want you throwing your career away. We're not even—" She paused, as if she couldn't bring herself to define what they were to each other. "You don't owe me anything." His heart twisted at her words. "I'm not doing this out of obligation. I'm here because I want to be. Because you shouldn't go through this alone." She pressed her lips together, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're risking everything for me." He took her hand gently, and this time she didn't pull away. "Some things are worth the risk." A tear slid down her cheek. In that quiet corner of the waiting area, all they had was each other, the beeping monitors and fluorescent lights overhead bearing witness. He leaned in slightly, feeling the warmth of her trembling fingers against his. She closed her eyes, letting herself rest momentarily against his shoulder. It was a small surrender, but for her it spoke volumes. They were startled by the sound of a nurse clearing her throat. "Dr. Evans can see you now," she said, pointing to a nearby office. Sarah stood, releasing Nathan's hand. Together they followed the nurse to a small consultation room where a serious-faced doctor waited. The conversation that followed was a blur of medical terms and financial estimates. The doctor explained that Gloria needed a specialized procedure, one that would come at a steep cost. Tony arrived partway through, face pale as he absorbed the news. Sarah's hands shook while she fumbled through questions, her voice cracking under the stress. Afterward, they were ushered back to the waiting area, now feeling more like a battlefield than a refuge. Tony slumped in a chair, clutching at the back of his neck. Sarah paced in short lines, nails biting into her palms. Nathan watched her, heart aching at every anxious footstep. Finally, she stopped and faced him, face flushed with desperation. "They're talking tens of thousands of dollars. I don't have that. Even if Tony and I both worked triple shifts, We couldn't raise that much. Nathan stepped closer. I can help, he said, voice steady. I don't have an endless fortune, but I have savings. It might cover a part at least. I'll figure out the rest. We'll figure it out together. Tony bristled, opening his mouth as if to argue, but Sarah looked at Nathan, eyes wet with conflicting emotions. I can't let you do that. It's too much. He shook his head. I want to. You and Gloria, your family matters to me. Her hands trembled. After a long beat, she fished in her coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled paper with the procedure's cost estimates. The sheet shook in her grip, numbers glaring in black ink. Nathan gently placed his hand over hers, feeling her clammy skin. Let me help, he whispered. Please. She closed her eyes, tears finally escaping down her cheeks. Then, in a voice that quivered with both relief and fear, she whispered the words she never thought she'd say. I don't know if I can let you do this, but I can't do it alone. Nathan stood in the corridor outside Gloria's hospital room, the fluorescent lights casting thin shadows across the polished floor. The sting of antiseptic lingered in the air. Inside, he could hear the hushed beeps of a monitor and the low hum of medical equipment. He'd offered to stay out of the way while Sarah visited with her aunt. She needed time to explain the financial situation without feeling self-conscious about his presence. Still, he remained close, arms folded tightly as if bracing himself for whatever might come next. After a few minutes, the door swung open and Sarah stepped out with a heavy sigh. She closed it quietly behind her and leaned against the wall. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue, but there was a layer of steely determination beneath. When she met Nathan's gaze, he saw gratitude mixed with lingering uncertainty. She's asleep, Sarah said softly. Tony's in there too, going over paperwork with the nurse. Nathan nodded, wishing he could do more than just stand there. How's Gloria holding up? Exhausted, Sarah answered. The new medications are helping, but the doctor keeps warning that time is short. The surgery needs to happen soon. Nathan heard the tremor in her voice, that pang of desperation she tried to mask. He reached out, hesitating a moment before gently placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure out a way. You're not alone in this. She didn't brush him off or tell him she could handle it on her own this time. Instead, she looked at him, that guarded wall in her expression wavering for just a second. Thank you, she whispered. I fought so hard to keep people from getting too close, but I'm too tired to keep fighting you, if that makes sense. His chest tightened with empathy. You don't have to fight me. Not now, not ever. He wanted to hold her, to let her know just how serious he was about helping, but he kept his voice gentle, giving her the space to decide how much closeness she could handle. She gave a slow nod, pushing away from the wall. I need some fresh air, she said. Come with me? Of course, he replied, following her down the sterile hallway to the elevators. They rode in silence to the ground floor, stepping out into the hospital's side courtyard. Winter-bare trees dotted the small lawn, and a frosty wind nipped at their faces. The night sky overhead was clear, city lights twinkling in the distance. They found a bench near a short walkway. Sarah sat, pulling her coat tighter around her, and Nathan settled beside her, feeling the cold wood beneath him. Their breath plumed in the crisp air. For a moment, neither spoke, both staring at a small patch of sky framed by the dark silhouettes of buildings. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. I haven't really told you how all this came to be, have I? Her gaze stayed on the sliver of moon, her voice low and raw. After my parents died, Gloria took me in. She was barely getting by herself, but she still gave me everything she could. She paid for my school supplies, drove me to soccer practice, always put me first. Now it's my turn to protect her. Nathan could see the guilt etched in her face. And you've done an amazing job, but no one can do everything alone. She closed her eyes briefly. I tried anyway. I've had to cut corners, skip meals, beg lenders for more time. I've let my cousin Tony bail me out more than once. Every time I get close to building up a safety net, something happens. Now, it's her life on the line. It feels like I'm standing on a ledge." Nathan exhaled, a swirl of steam escaping his lips. "I get that feeling. I lost my family a long time ago, not all at once, but over the years. Illness, accidents. I crawled into a shell and stayed there for a decade. My way of handling the pain was to block everything out, keep my head down at work. I never realized how lonely I was until Michael pushed me into meeting you." She turned to him, genuine curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Why me? I mean, Michael's been your friend for ages, but what made him think I was the right person?" Nathan offered a sheepish smile. "He told me I'd find someone who was real, someone with grit, who'd understand that life isn't all sunshine. And he was right. I see someone who's fighting with everything she's got. That kind of strength. I admire it." She studied him, letting his words settle. "That's heavy," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not used to people saying nice things and meaning them. Usually there's a catch, or they ghost me when it gets complicated." He tried to steady the pounding in his chest. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah, I promise." She pulled her coat sleeve over her hand, rubbing at her tired eyes. "I want to believe that." "Believe it," he said, his tone firmer than he expected. "Look, I know you're worried about letting me help financially. You think you'll owe me something, or that I'll vanish the second it gets tough. But I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be." Sarah nodded slowly, her breath catching. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "What if Gloria doesn't make it? What if your boss fires you because you're not delivering on time? What if everything falls apart?" Nathan took her hands in his, ignoring the cold. "Then we deal with it together. I might not have all the answers, but I'm done letting fear decide everything." Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. "You don't know how badly I need to hear that," she said in a broken whisper. "Thank you." They sat like that for a long while, hands entwined as the wind rustled through naked branches. The stark honesty they'd just shared felt like a turning point, two people acknowledging the weight of their histories and deciding it didn't have to define them. Eventually, a staff member in scrubs poked her head out of a side door. "Sarah, I was told you're out here. Gloria's awake now, asking for you." Sarah stood, clasping Nathan's hand one last time before letting go. "I should go. Will you wait?" He rose, shaking some feeling back into his chilled limbs. "Of course. I'll be here." She walked back inside, and Nathan lingered in the courtyard a moment, heart pounding from everything they'd just shared. He felt a surge of relief tempered by the knowledge that the real battles weren't over. Far from it. A while later, after pacing aimlessly near the entrance, he ventured back into the hallway where he found Sarah emerging from Gloria's room. Her eyes were red, but she looked more resolute than before. Tony trailed behind her, no longer glaring at Nathan with outright hostility, though the mistrust in his expression remained. Sarah lowered her voice. "Gloria's stable for now. She asked if you were the one helping with finances. She's worried about that." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. "It's not just about the money. Whatever you need, moral support, research, anything, I'll give it. But I do want to help cover the cost of the surgery, at least part of it, if that's okay with you." Tony scowled, but Sarah stepped in before he could speak. "We're still figuring out how to accept that kind of help," she said. She paused, swallowing. "It's a big step." Nathan nodded, forcing a gentle smile. "Take the time you need." Just then, his phone buzzed. He frowned, recognizing his boss's number. The tension around them spiked as he answered, stepping aside for a moment. The brief call ended with Nathan promising to deliver a finished project by the end of the night. No excuses. He could feel the weight pressing down. If he messed this up, he'd probably lose his job, and losing his job meant risking the financial security he could offer Sarah. He returned to find Sarah and Tony waiting. Tony locked eyes with Nathan, gesturing at the phone. "Your boss again?" Nathan exhaled. "He wants results by tomorrow morning. I might need to pull an all-nighter, but that doesn't change what I said. I'm here for you both." Tony pressed his lips together, looking torn. Then, with a curt nod, he turned away, muttering something about speaking to the nurse. Sarah touched Nathan's forearm lightly. "Go, do what you have to do. I'll let you know if anything changes here." He hesitated, not wanting to abandon her, but the reality of the job ultimatum was staring him in the face. "I'll be back as soon as I can," he promised. She managed a small, tired smile. "I know." Outside, the cold night air hit him again as he hurried toward his car. He gripped the steering wheel once inside, letting out a shaky breath. The practical side of him screamed to drive straight home, finish the project, and cling to his career. But the pull to stay with Sarah was just as strong. Time was stacked against him. He started the engine, mind racing. He'd find a way. Somehow he'd finish the work, keep his job, and stay ready to help Sarah and Gloria. It would take a leap of faith, and maybe a few miracles along the way, but he refused to give up. As the engine rumbled to life, he caught a glimpse of his phone on the passenger seat, the screen black. No new messages from Sarah, but he could still feel the warmth of her hand in his. With one more steadying breath, he pulled out of the hospital parking lot, determined not to fail either of the promises he'd made tonight. He steels himself for an all-nighter, determined to keep both the job and the chance to build a life with Sarah. Nathan slumped into the hospital's plastic chair, trying to keep his eyes open after what felt like a lifetime of sleepless hours. The glow of the early morning sun filtered through the tall windows in the waiting area, painting long shadows on the polished floor. Somewhere in his mind, he kept counting the seconds since he'd sent off the final version of his work project, 1 minute before the deadline, just hours ago. Now his phone lay silent in his pocket, work messages finally subdued. He turned his attention to the corridor that led to Gloria's room, where Sarah had disappeared at dawn. He rubbed a hand over his face, remembering how he'd raced through spreadsheets and data analyses all night, scanning for errors, driven by the fear of losing his job. And yet, through every sleepless moment, he could think only of Sarah, of how she leaned on him for hope, however faint. He'd promised to make it back to the hospital, and so he had, mind buzzing from caffeine and worry. A slight squeak of rubber-soled shoes made him glance up. Sarah stood in front of him, arms folded protectively, her face a study in exhaustion and relief. He bolted upright. "You're done with your project?" she asked softly, as if she couldn't quite believe he'd actually managed it. He nodded. "Pulled an all-nighter. Submitted everything just in time. My boss left a voicemail. Sounds like it's good enough for now." His eyes fell to her trembling shoulders. "What about Gloria?" Sarah eased into the chair beside him, letting out a long breath. "The doctor said she's stable enough for surgery in a couple of days. We still have a pile of logistics to sort out, but we have a timeline now." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I can't believe we might actually get her help in time." Nathan felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost made him dizzy. He reached for Sarah's hand, interlacing their fingers. "That's amazing news." She blinked back tears. "Tony's in there with her, filling out some forms. We're still figuring out the payment plan. About that, we wanted to talk to you." Nathan tensed, wondering if Tony had found a way to say thanks or if he'd try once more to push him away. He cleared his throat, standing up. "Should I go in now?" She nodded, standing too. Together they walked to Gloria's room. The hospital halls felt still in the early hour, the rush of staff and visitors at a lull. When they reached the door, Sarah gently nudged it open. Warm overhead lights cast a soft glow on Gloria, who lay propped up by pillows, eyes half closed but alert. Tony stood by the window, arms crossed, gaze distant. Nathan offered a tentative smile. "Hey, Gloria, how are you feeling?" She motioned him closer. Though her face was lined with fatigue, There was a resolute spark in her eyes. "Nathan, right? Sarah's talked about you. I heard you've been a big help." Her voice was quiet, each breath appearing to cost her some effort. Nathan blushed slightly. "I'm just glad I can do something." Gloria nodded slowly, glancing at Tony, who still wore his usual guarded expression. "We appreciate it," she said. "Surgery's expensive, but the hospital has a financial plan. Sarah told me you volunteered to cover part of what insurance won't. I know it's not easy, especially for someone who's not family." He swallowed, noticing Tony's jaw tighten. "It's not something you need to worry about. You've taken care of Sarah for so long. Let someone else take care of you. Just this once." Tony cleared his throat, stepping forward. "We discussed it. I still don't like leaning on anybody, but if it means saving Gloria's life..." He exhaled, all the anger drained from his voice. "We'll do what we must. I appreciate you stepping up." A flicker of relief coursed through Nathan. He inclined his head, hoping Tony could see the sincerity in his eyes. Then Gloria's voice drew his attention back. "Sarah mentioned you've lost your share of family," she said gently. "I'm sorry." Nathan felt a small ache in his chest, the kind that never fully went away. "I used to think that if I avoided new connections, I wouldn't risk feeling that pain again." He offered a wry shrug. "But I'm learning that facing it is sometimes the only way to live." Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was the same way, pushing everyone away thinking I could handle it all. But I've been wrong." A quiet, comfortable hush settled over them. Outside in the hallway, someone's footsteps tapped by. Gloria closed her eyes, exhaustion taking over. Sarah placed a gentle hand on her aunt's arm, whispering for her to rest. Tony mumbled something about heading to the cafeteria for coffee, leaving Nathan and Sarah by the bedside. After a few moments, they stepped out to let Gloria sleep. The corridor stretched ahead like a winding path in the hush of early morning. Sarah led Nathan to a small alcove near a window, where she sank onto a cushioned bench. The city skyline beyond the glass was bathed in pale daylight, soft clouds drifting across a washed-out sky. Nathan sat beside her, letting out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "What happens next?" She chewed on the inside of her cheek. "We wait for the final green light from the surgeon, then pay the bills, sign the forms, and pray the procedure does what it's supposed to." She paused, eyes flickering to his. "And you? Your job? Are you going to be okay?" He managed a crooked grin. "I spoke to my boss briefly. I might not get a glowing performance review, but I think I'll keep my position. I'll have to do some serious damage control over the next few weeks, but I can handle that." His gaze softened as he studied her face. "Don't worry about me. I'd quit if it meant helping you, though I'm hoping it won't come to that." She exhaled slowly, leaning her head on his shoulder. For once, she let herself rest against him without shying away. "Thank you for everything. I never thought I'd let someone help like this." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. "I'm grateful you did." They stayed like that, pressed together in the quiet haven of the hospital's alcove, letting the swirl of life outside pass by. Neither had to say out loud how precarious things still were, how the surgery could bring complications, how finances might remain tight, how work stress could flare again. But for now, they were together, facing it side by side. Over the following days, they worked in tandem to finalize Gloria's surgery paperwork, speak with insurance reps, and arrange for Tony to coordinate with hospital staff. Michael came by with a small gift basket, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. The relief on Sarah's face each time a friend stopped by told Nathan she was beginning to feel less alone. At last, the day of the procedure arrived. Nathan stood with Sarah and Tony, hands locked in a tense chain as Gloria was wheeled into the operating theater. She looked fragile but determined, offering them a reassuring smile. Time stretched like rubber, every minute in the waiting room feeling like an hour. Anxious families and the occasional nurse or doctor passed by, but no one had news for them. Finally, a doctor emerged from the double doors. The slight smile creasing his face caused Sarah's knees to almost buckle. "The surgery went well," he said, voice steady. "She'll have a rough recovery ahead, but the immediate danger has passed." Tears streamed freely down Sarah's cheeks as she leaned into Nathan. Tony murmured a quiet, emotional thanks, eyes glistening with relief. Nathan felt a surge of gratitude so profound he could hardly speak. He just held Sarah, heart thrumming with the realization that they'd reached a turning point, one that promised hope instead of despair. The next day, Gloria was still recovering, surrounded by flowers and well wishes from hospital staff who'd grown fond of her spirited personality. Sarah perched by the bed, holding her aunt's hand. Nathan lingered in the background, letting them share this personal victory. Eventually, Sarah came out into the hall, face bright despite exhaustion. "We've been talking about the future," she said. "Gloria wants to move somewhere quieter once she's stable enough, maybe near Boston where there's a specialist who can monitor her condition. We're not sure how soon, but she doesn't want to stay here indefinitely." He took her hands, noticing how they no longer trembled with constant worry. "You'll go with her, won't you?" She bit her lip, glancing down. "She'd like me to. I think it might be time. A fresh start, somewhere new. But I don't want to lose what we have here either." Nathan's throat tightened. The thought of her leaving brought a pang of fear, but he knew better than to let it paralyze him. "Wherever you go, that's where I want to be," he said softly. "We can figure out the details. My job, living arrangements, together." Her eyes shimmered. For a moment it seemed she might protest, but instead she stepped closer, resting a palm gently against his cheek. "You've shown me how much can happen when we choose to open up, to risk caring." He turned his head to kiss her palm. "I've spent 10 years alone, terrified of losing everything I cared about. But if these last weeks have taught me anything, it's that real living means taking that risk." A nurse bustling by nearly bumped them, interrupting the tender moment. They shared a small laugh, stepping to the side. Sarah brushed away a tear. "Gloria wants to do something symbolic once she's out of the hospital," she explained. "Something about building a memorial or a garden in honor of all we've lost. Maybe even name it for your loved ones, too." Nathan felt his heart swell at the idea. The chance to turn grief into growth, to plant new seeds in memory of those who'd passed, struck him as perfect. "I'd be honored," he said. Sarah's lips curved into a gentle smile. "It's the least we can do to remind ourselves that our past doesn't have to overshadow our present." They stood there, the future not fully formed but glimmering with promise. In the background, the steady beeping of monitors and low chatter of hospital staff carried on, but for Nathan and Sarah the world seemed to slow. All the fear and isolation they'd both endured for so long now felt like stepping stones toward this moment where hope and closeness shone brighter than any doubt. He pressed his forehead against hers, voice catching with emotion as he whispered, "10 years alone taught me to be afraid of losing everything. But you showed me that to truly live we have to risk everything." Her eyes reflected the same certainty. "We risk it all," she agreed softly, "because what we gain is worth it." They stood in that quiet hallway, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, together. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.